I invested my life savings in my best friend's business. She cut me out and called it good business. We started our business in her garage with a laptop, a dream, and less than $1,000 between us. I believed in her when no one else did. I worked nights after my day job, answered emails at 2 a.m., and maxed out credit cards to keep us afloat. She was my best friend, my sister in every way that mattered. 3 years later, we're making more money than I ever imagined possible. But I haven't seen a dime of it. She bought a new house. I'm still in my cramped apartment. She drives a luxury SUV. I take the bus. When I finally confronted her, she said I was being emotional and that my contributions were minimal. She offered me a small buyout. And then she mentioned something that made me realize she'd been planning this from the very beginning. The rain was coming down in sheets that evening, the kind of downpour that makes you question why you ever left the house. I stood outside her new house, watching the water slide off the pristine roofline, cascading onto the manicured lawn I knew she paid someone else to maintain. I had never been invited here. She'd sent me the address once, buried in an email about a meeting, and I had memorized it out of curiosity more than anything. 3 years ago, she couldn't afford rent. 3 years ago, she slept on my couch for 4 months while we brainstormed business plans on napkins at 24-hour diners. 3 years ago, she told me we were partners. I rang the doorbell and heard the chime echo through the foyer. When she opened the door, she looked different. She was wearing silk, her hair perfectly styled, a glass of wine in her hand. The casual confidence she'd developed over the past year was foreign to me. The woman I knew used to bite her nails and stress-eat pretzels during late-night work sessions. "Hey," she said, her voice light. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said. "About the business." She stepped aside and let me in. The house smelled like sandalwood and expensive candles. Everything was immaculate. It wasn't the chaotic, lived-in warmth we used to share in our cramped office space. It was sterile, impersonal. And it made me sad, because the woman I remembered loved chaos. "What's wrong?" she asked, settling onto a white leather couch. "You seem upset." "I want to discuss my equity," I said. "We agreed on 40% when we started." She laughed. I'd never heard that laugh before. It was hollow and sharp. "You're joking, right?" "I'm not joking," I said, sitting across from her. "I put in the initial investment. I wrote the business plan. I handled client relations for the first 18 months. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable." She set her wine glass down and leaned forward, her expression shifting from amusement to something harder. "Let me be clear about something. You were helpful in the beginning. I'll give you that. But I built this company. I made the connections. I closed the deals. You were support staff." The words hit me like a physical blow. Support staff. I thought about the nights I'd spent proofreading contracts until my eyes burned. The weekends I'd sacrificed to redesign our website when the developer we hired ghosted us. The money I'd taken from my savings, money I'd earmarked for a down payment on a house, to cover our first payroll when a client delayed payment. "We had a partnership agreement," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to keep it steady. "We wrote it together. We both signed it." She stood up and walked to a sleek desk in the corner of the room. She pulled out a folder and tossed it onto the coffee table in front of me. "Read it again, carefully." I opened the folder. It was the partnership agreement, the one we'd drafted together in the early days. I skimmed the first few pages, my heart pounding in my ears. Then I saw it. The section on equity distribution was worded differently than I remembered. It stated that my ownership stake was contingent on ongoing financial contributions and active operational management. And according to the document, she had sole discretion to determine what constituted active management. "You changed it," I whispered. "I didn't change anything," she said, sitting back down. "You just never read it properly. I had a lawyer look at it last year. He pointed out a few ambiguities. We clarified them." "A few ambiguities?" I stared at her, searching for any trace of the friend I used to know. "You rewrote the entire section." "I made it accurate," she said. "The reality is, you stopped working full-time when you got that other job. You stopped coming to meetings. You weren't as involved as you used to be." "Because I had to make rent," I shouted, my composure finally cracking. "Because you couldn't pay me a salary. I had to work 2 jobs to survive while you were building your empire on my back." She didn't flinch. She just sat there, perfectly composed, like she'd been rehearsing this conversation for months. "You made choices. I made choices. That's business." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something at the pristine walls of her perfect house. But instead, I took a deep breath and picked up the folder. "I'm going to talk to a lawyer." "You do that," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "But you should know. I've already discussed this with our legal team. We're prepared to offer you a settlement. $5,000. Take it or leave it. $5,000. My mind raced through the numbers. I'd invested over $30,000 of my own money. I'd worked thousands of hours. Our company was now valued at over $2 million. And she was offering me $5,000. "This isn't fair," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Fair?" She laughed again, that same hollow sound. "Nothing in business is fair. You should have protected yourself better." I stood up, my legs unsteady beneath me. I wanted to say something cutting, something that would make her feel even a fraction of the betrayal I was feeling, but the words wouldn't come. My throat was tight, my eyes burning with unshed tears. As I walked toward the door, she called out after me, "Oh, and one more thing. The settlement offer has a deadline. You have 72 hours to accept it. After that, we'll consider the matter closed." I turned around and looked at her one last time. She was still seated on that white leather couch, her posture perfect. perfect, her expression serene. She looked like a queen on a throne, and I realized with a sickening clarity that she had been planning this all along. She'd never seen me as a partner. She'd seen me as a stepping stone. The door closed behind me and the rain soaked through my jacket within seconds. I stood on her porch, shivering, clutching the folder to my chest. I knew I needed a lawyer. I knew I needed to fight. But more than anything, I needed to understand how the person I trusted most in the world could become a stranger. The rain had stopped by the time I reached my apartment, but I was still shivering. My clothes clung to my skin, heavy and cold, and my hands trembled as I fumbled with the keys. The lock clicked open, and I stepped into the cramped space that had been my home for the past 6 years. It smelled like yesterday's takeout and the faint mustiness of old carpet. I'd always told myself it was temporary, that once the business took off, I'd move somewhere better. Somewhere with natural light and a dishwasher and a bedroom that wasn't also my office. That dream felt like a cruel joke now. I dropped the folder on the kitchen counter and stood there for a long moment, staring at the closed pizza box and the stack of unopened mail. My reflection stared back at me from the dark window. Tired eyes, wet hair plastered to my face, a defeated slump to my shoulders. I barely recognized myself. The first person I called was my brother. He'd always been my anchor, the one who told me the truth even when I didn't want to hear it. He answered on the second ring, his voice groggy with sleep. "It's almost midnight," he said. "Are you okay?" "No," I admitted. "I'm really not." I told him everything. The house, the conversation, the rewritten agreement, the insulting settlement offer. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, the silence stretching longer with each detail I shared. "Get a lawyer," he said finally. "Tonight, or first thing tomorrow." "Get a lawyer," he said finally. "Tonight, or first thing tomorrow." "I don't have money for a lawyer," I said. "She knows that. That's why she made the offer so low. She knows I can't afford to fight." "You can't afford not to fight," he said. "Listen to me. She's counting on you to give up. She's betting that you'll take the $5,000 and disappear. Don't give her that satisfaction." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel that spark of righteous anger that would propel me into battle mode, but all I felt was exhaustion, the kind of bone-deep fatigue that comes from being used and discarded by someone you love. "I need to sleep," I said. "I'll figure it out tomorrow." I hung up and peeled off my wet clothes, leaving them in a heap on the bathroom floor. I stood under the hot water for a long time, letting it wash away the chill, but it couldn't wash away the knot of dread that had taken root in my chest. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. It wasn't a good plan, but it was something. I would go through every email, every text message, every document from the past 3 years. I would compile evidence of my contributions, and then I would confront her one more time. I'd give her a chance to do the right thing before I took legal action. I spent the entire day hunched over my laptop, scrolling through thousands of messages. I found the early emails where she'd called me her partner. I found the spreadsheets I'd created that tracked our expenses and revenue. I found the client contracts I'd negotiated and the marketing plans I'd drafted. I built a folder of evidence that painted a clear picture. I wasn't just support staff. I was the foundation. By evening, I had a stack of printed documents thick enough to rival a phone book. I called her and left a voicemail asking for one more meeting. I didn't expect her to agree, but she surprised me. She called back within the hour. "Fine," she said. "Tomorrow, my office, 10 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." The next morning, I arrived at our office. Her office, I supposed I should call it now. The building was modern and glass-walled, filled with young employees who glanced at me with mild curiosity as I walked past. I remembered when this space was just a blueprint, a pipe dream sketched on a napkin. Now it was real, humming with productivity, and I was an outsider. She was waiting for me in the conference room, seated at the head of the table like a CEO in a boardroom. The room was sleek and minimalist, with a long white table and chairs that looked more like art than furniture. She gestured for me to sit. "I'm glad you came," she said. "I was hoping you'd see reason." I set my folder of evidence on the table. "I'm here to present my case. Everything I've done for this company is documented. Every hour, every dollar, every contribution. I'm not asking for half. I'm asking for what we originally agreed upon, 40%. She didn't even glance at the documents. She just smiled. That same condescending smile she'd worn the night before. "I'm not going to argue with you. The offer stands, $5,000. You have until noon today to accept." "Today?" I said, my voice rising. "You gave me 72 hours. I changed my mind," she said. "I'm not dragging this out. Accept the offer, or I'll see you in court. And when I do, I'll make sure you pay my legal fees." Her confidence was unnerving. She wasn't bluffing. She had lawyers, money, and resources. I had a folder of printouts, and a brother who believed in me. The odds weren't in my favor. I sat there in that sterile conference room, staring at the woman who had been my best friend, and I felt something inside me shift. The exhaustion was still there, but beneath it, a spark of something else kindled. Resolve. I wasn't going to let her win. "I'll see you in court," I said. I stood up and walked out of that room with my head held high. Behind me, I heard her laugh. It echoed through the hallway, bouncing off the glass walls, following me all the way to the elevator. I spent the next few days in a haze of research and consultations. My brother helped me find a lawyer who agreed to take my case on contingency. She was a sharp woman with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She reviewed my documents and nodded slowly. "You have a strong case," she said, "but it's going to be an uphill battle. She'll drag this out, try to outlast you. Are you prepared for that?" "I'm prepared for anything," I said. but I wasn't. Not really. The first blow came a week later. My lawyer called me with news. Her team had filed a motion to dismiss my case, arguing that I had no standing because I'd voluntarily stepped back from active management. They included an affidavit from a former employee, someone I'd personally hired and trained, claiming I'd been disengaged and unreliable. I read the affidavit 3 times, my hands shaking. The employee's name was familiar. She was the first person I'd ever hired, a recent college graduate with no experience but plenty of enthusiasm. I'd mentored her, taught her everything she knew, and now she was testifying against me. Betrayal was a word I'd always understood intellectually, but feeling it, experiencing it in your bones, was something else entirely. It was a weight in your chest, a coldness in your veins, a voice in your head that whispered, everyone is capable of abandoning you. I called my brother again, desperate for reassurance. I don't know how much more of this I can take. Then stop, he said. Drop the case. Take the money. Walk away. You told me to fight. I told you to fight if you could win, he said. But I'm not going to watch you destroy yourself for someone who doesn't deserve it. His words hit me harder than I expected. He was right. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about proving something to her, to myself, to anyone who had ever doubted me. But at what cost? I was exhausting my savings, draining my emotional reserves, losing myself in a battle I might not win. I sat on my couch for hours that night, staring at the ceiling. I thought about our friendship, the late nights, the shared dreams, the way we used to finish each other's sentences. I thought about her laugh, the real one, before it turned hollow and sharp. I thought about how we used to believe in each other. And then I made a decision. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I'm not going to fight her in court, I said. I'm going to take the settlement. Are you sure? My lawyer asked. We've already built a strong case. I'm sure, I said. But I'm not giving up. I'm just changing my approach. I had one more card to play, one that would force her to see me. Really see me, for the first time in years. It wasn't a legal move. It was an emotional one. I drove to her house that evening, unannounced. I knew she'd be home. She rarely worked late now that she had employees to handle the heavy lifting. I rang the doorbell and waited. When she opened the door, she looked surprised. I thought we were done negotiating. We are, I said. I'm accepting the offer. $5,000. You can send the paperwork to my lawyer. She blinked, clearly thrown off by my compliance. That's unexpected. I know, I said, but I want you to know something. This isn't the end. You've taken my money, my time, and my friendship, but you haven't taken my integrity. And one day, you're going to realize what you lost. I just hope it doesn't take losing everything for you to see it. I turned and walked away without waiting for her response. I could feel her eyes on my back as I walked to my car. I didn't look back. The money arrived in my bank account a week later, $5,000, a fraction of what I deserved. But as I stared at the number on my screen, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. It was over. I could finally move on. The $5,000 sat in my bank account for exactly 2 days before I decided what to do with it. I could have used it for rent, or groceries, or any of the 1,000 practical things I'd been neglecting, but I didn't. Instead, I withdrew it in cash, stuffed it into an envelope, and drove to the one place I knew would give me clarity, the diner where we used to meet. It hadn't changed. The vinyl booths were still cracked, the fluorescent lights still buzzed, and the coffee still tasted like it had been sitting on the burner since 1995. I slid into our usual booth, the one by the window where we'd spent countless hours mapping out our future. The waitress, a woman named Rosa, who'd known us by name, came over with a pot of coffee. "Where's your friend?" she asked, pouring me a cup. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't think she's my friend anymore." Rosa nodded slowly, the way people do when they've seen too much of life to be surprised by its cruelties. That happens sometimes. People change, or they show you who they really are. I sat in that booth for over an hour, sipping terrible coffee and watching the rain streak down the window. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the dreams we'd shared, the betrayal that had shattered them, and I realized something that surprised me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired, yes, disappointed, certainly, but the fiery rage that had burned in my chest for weeks had faded into something quieter, something that felt suspiciously like acceptance. She had shown me who she really was, and I had finally believed her. The next few weeks were a blur of small decisions and quiet victories. I found a part-time job at a local bookstore, the kind of place that smelled like paper and possibility. It didn't pay much, but it paid enough. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since college, short stories mostly, about people who reminded me of myself, people who had been knocked down but found the strength to stand back up. My brother called me every few days to check in. He'd stopped asking about the lawsuit, stopped pushing me to fight. Instead, he asked about my day, about the book I was reading, about the stray cat I'd started feeding on my fire escape. He was giving me space to heal, and I loved him for it. Then 6 weeks after I'd accepted the settlement, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "It's me," she said. Her voice was different, softer, uncertain. "I know," I said. "What do you want?" "Can we meet? Please, I need to talk to you." I should have said no. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to hang up, to block her number, to protect myself from any more pain. But there was a small, stubborn part of me that still remembered the girl who had slept on my couch and dreamed big dreams. The girl who had been my sister in every way that mattered. "Same diner," I said. "Tomorrow at noon." I arrived early the next day, my stomach churning with nerves. I ordered coffee and waited, watching the door with a mixture of dread and curiosity. She walked in at exactly noon. She looked different. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, the kind she used to wear when we were working late. She wasn't wearing silk or designer clothes. She was in jeans and a simple sweater. She looked like the old her. She slid into the booth across from me and sat in silence for a long moment. Rosa came over, and she ordered coffee. The same terrible coffee we used to drink. "I don't know where to start," she finally said. "Start at the beginning," I said. "Or don't start at all. I don't have time for games." She flinched at my tone but didn't argue. "I've been thinking about everything, a lot, and I realized I made a terrible mistake." I waited. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. "The business is falling apart," she continued. The clients I built everything on, they're leaving, the staff is quitting. I've been trying to hold it together, but nothing's working. And I realized it's because I pushed away the one person who actually knew how to run things. "Are you here to offer me my share?" I asked. She shook her head. "I'm here to apologize. I know it doesn't change anything. I know it doesn't undo what I did, but I need you to know that I'm sorry for everything. For the money, for the lies, for treating you like you were nothing. You were never nothing. You were everything." I stared at her, searching for any trace of deception. But her eyes were red-rimmed. Her voice raw. She wasn't acting. This was real. "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate that." "Is that it?" she asked. "Just thank you?" "Just thank you," I confirmed, "because that's all you're getting. I'm not coming back to work for you. I'm not going to fix your problems, and I'm not going to pretend we can go back to the way things were." She nodded slowly, her shoulders slumping. "I didn't expect you to. I needed you to know, and I wanted to give you this." She pulled an envelope from her bag and slid it across the table. I opened it. Inside was a check. The amount was for $100,000. "What is this?" I asked. "What I owe you. What you deserve. I sold some of my assets. I know it's not everything, but it's what I can do right now. No strings attached. You don't have to do anything for it. It's the right thing." I looked at the check, then at her. "Why now?" "Because I'm trying to become the person I used to be," she said. "The person you believed in. I don't know if I can get there, but I want to try. This is the first step." I folded the check and slid it into my pocket. "I'll think about it." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just sat there with her, drinking terrible coffee, watching the rain fall outside the window. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It was something smaller, a crack in the wall I'd built around myself. The days that followed were strange. I deposited the check but didn't touch the money. It sat in my savings account, a reminder of what I'd lost and what I'd gained. I thought about what she'd said, about trying to become the person she used to be, and I realized I needed to do the same thing. I started focusing on myself. I took up painting, something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for. I bought a small easel and cheap paints and spent hours in my apartment, mixing colors and making messes. I was terrible at it, but I didn't care. It was mine. I also started going to therapy. It wasn't something I'd ever considered before, but my brother pushed me to try it. My therapist was a kind woman named Dr. Morrison who listened without judgment and asked questions that made me think. We talked about the business, the betrayal, the layers of grief I hadn't even realized I was carrying. "You trusted her," Dr. Morrison said during one session, "and she broke that trust. But your worth doesn't depend on her actions. You built something, you contributed something. And even if she took that away, the skills you developed, the experience you gained, those are still yours." I sat with those words for a long time. She was right. I had let her define me, let her decide my value. And I was done with that. A few months later, I got another call. This time it wasn't from her. It was from a former client, someone I'd worked closely with during the early days. "I heard about what happened," she said. "I'm starting my own venture, and I need someone who understands the process, someone I can trust. I was hoping that might be you." I didn't say yes immediately. I thought about it. I weighed the risks. But in the end, I took the job. It was a small operation, just a few people in a shared workspace, but it was honest, and it was mine. I didn't talk to my former friend for a long time after that. I would see glimpses of her on social media, hear rumors about her struggling to keep her company afloat. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel pity. I just felt neutral, the way you feel about a chapter you've finished reading. Then, one evening, a letter arrived at my apartment. It was in her handwriting. I opened it and read, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve your time, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying. I'm getting help. I'm going to therapy. I'm learning to be better. I don't know if you'll ever want to speak to me again, but if you do, I'll be here. Not as a business partner, just as someone who misses you." I read that letter twice, then I tucked it into a drawer with the other mementos from my old life. I didn't call her, I wasn't ready, but I didn't throw it away either, because sometimes people do change. Sometimes the walls we build can come down, and maybe, just maybe, there's room for second chances. Not immediately, not easily, but eventually. I'm still learning to trust. I'm still learning to let people in, but I'm also learning to trust myself, to believe in my own worth, to know that I deserve better than what I once accepted, and that's a lesson no amount of money could ever buy.